Good afternoon. My name is Angela Cochran. I am the Associate Publisher and Journals Director at the American Society of Civil Engineers in Reston, Virginia. I'm also the President-elect of the Society of Scholarly Publishing and a regular contributor and Associate Editor of the Scholarly Kitchen. So ASCE came together in the 1850s when engineers, mostly in the New York, Philadelphia, and Boston areas, decided that there was a need to get together and talk about their best practices, what works, what doesn't work, and what needs to happen. And as the organization grew, members were more distributed. And so the decision was made in 1872 that there was a need to publish these reports that engineers were making at their meetings. And that's when Transactions of the Society started publishing. In 1957, those transactions turned into our 12 flagship journals that are aligned with technical divisions within civil engineering. And we were happy to celebrate the 60th anniversary of those publications not too long ago. So those 12 journals have now grown to 35 journal titles. And in addition to that, we're publishing proceedings, committee reports, manuals of practice, and importantly, standards. The standards represent a large chunk of our content development funding. So the standards can include things like building standards, what this building needs to do to withstand wind loads and snow loads, to very specific standards meeting very specific needs. We also have in our digital library, in our ASCE library, our digital content for journals goes back to 1982 and for proceedings to 2000, and we have about 500 of our book products that are published as ebooks on the same platform. We are a self-published society. We're like a dying breed of self-publishing societies. It gets harder and harder to be a self-publishing society as time moves on. And what that means is that we manage our own vendors for submission and manuscript tracking, for our platform. We have vendors for copy editing, typesetting, and tagging that we manage, and also bibliographic databases and additional content platforms that we've been developing in support of our standards program. So all of this is managed in-house with probably to some of you at the larger societies, a shockingly small staff of people. So we have about 31 people in our publications division that handles everything involving these publications from soup to nuts. So in August of 2018, I wrote a column in the Scholarly Kitchen, a post in the Scholarly Kitchen called Clowns to the Left of Me, Jokers to the Right, about an independent publisher and what it means in the face of vendor mergers and acquisitions. And the response to this post was interesting. First, I'm constantly asked by people who think they're either a clown or a joker which one I think they are. But it really sort of misses the point. The point was it's a lead-in to the song called Stuck in the Middle. And so so that's where we are. And for all of you who may have had bad flashbacks to a gruesome scene in Reservoir Dogs when I reignited this song on the internet, I apologize. So this was really sort of on the heels of what inspired this post it was sort of an immediate reaction to Elsevier purchasing Ares, who we use their editorial manager system. And also sort of taking a long view and looking at the development that's going on with platforms and the development, the strategic development that large publishers are undertaking. So, you know, we know we've been reading a lot about sort of Elsevier's strategy for workflow tools and what they're providing to the research community and wanting to provide access and platforms from the beginning of a process all the way through publication and beyond. And then taking a look at last summer with a more wide view approach of what APE, who is our platform provider, and purchased by Wiley, what APE was building onto their tools made it much more clear what their strategy and what Wiley's strategy is around some of those same concepts about being involved in the process from the time research is started all the way through. So given that they were both our vendors, it sort of inspired me to put some thoughts to it. And generally, the post explored both of those things. So what happens when a publisher purchases a once publisher agnostic vendor? And what happens when a publisher needs new technology to provide these end-to-end product solutions? So thinking about what we do, I sort of wanted to focus on these two ideas, that scholarly publishing is a process that requires tools for a customized process involving lots of people, many of whom are not power users. And when I say many of whom are not power users, I'm talking about our volunteers. I have over 850 volunteer editors at all different levels, tens of thousands of reviewers. A lot of them are also your editors and your reviewers, so you know the people I'm talking about. But these tools need to be easy for a large group of people. We also require lots of sophisticated reporting out of the system. So there needs to be platforms that meet everybody's needs. And then scholarly publishing is a platform requiring strict technical standards and maximum interoperability. And Philip talked a little bit about that a few minutes ago. What can we do with the content? How can things move? And how can we reduce pain points for our author community? So when we found out from Adipon that Wiley had purchased Adipon, was a whole host of emotions that happened in the office, from holy cow to, oh no, what does this mean, to a much more pragmatic response of thinking about what the pros and cons might be. And we went through the entire exercise again when news broke that Elsevier had purchased Ares. So I'm hoping I don't have any more vendors. But so some of the pros and cons that we've been sort of thinking about with our once publisher agnostic platforms now being owned by major publishers, one of the cons is sort of this loss of influence. And I have to say that I recognize that influence may be perceived influence. So we think that as a medium-sized self-published society, that we have a partnership with our vendors, I still feel that way, but that we also have some sort of influence over their roadmap. And we try to take advantage of that as best we can. I have to say we have a bit of a reputation at the editorial manager user group meeting of sending plenty of staff members to that meeting, all with a specific agenda, and we ask for the same thing in every session that we're in and make sure that the things that we want are at the top of the list, and we campaign for people to vote them up. So this is how we have been influencing what it is that we want to get out of that system. So now, is our roadmap as important? Probably not. And so there's a bit of a sting there where you feel like maybe you've lost some of that influence, but maybe we never had it in the first place. So that would be one of the pros. So maybe it wasn't our roadmap anyway. There's going to be a change in the size of your fish and the size of their pond. So we may have felt like we were a large-ish customer, and we may not be that same size anymore. And their pond's gotten a lot bigger. So that's something to consider. But on the pro side, there's a bigger fish that's pushing for development. So there's money, and there's a larger influence in making the tools better. There might be a mission change, and this is something that I think we're still sort of waiting to see what happens. But, what is the goal? Certainly, Wiley needed a new platform. Obviously, it made more sense for them to buy one than to build one. Same thing for Elsevier. Elsevier had been investing in building their own manuscript submission system and instead decided to purchase Ares. I know people at all of those companies. I am thrilled for Ares that this happened. I am thrilled for Adipon that their company was purchased as well. But there needs to be, it gives you some room for thought on what exactly becomes the mission of each of those vendors. But then on the pro side, there's more capital improvement. So there's more money for development, which is, and it doesn't have to come from me, so that's a good thing. The big con, and I don't know, I mean, it's a con in a way that it just bugs me, is that I'm now paying a lot of money to Wiley and Elsevier, and Wiley and Elsevier are my competitors. They may not think of me as their competitor, But I most definitely think of them every time I get an email forwarded to me from an author that says, well, I work on an Elsevier journal too, and what they do, and can't you do it? And sometimes the answer is yes, and oftentimes the answer is no. So what are the alternatives? There are certainly other commercial platforms. Who knows? Maybe they'll be attractive to another big publisher who wants to purchase them. So you could take a chance with that. You can partner with other societies and look for new solutions, and I'm not going to say a whole lot about that because Lauren's going to tell you a nice case study. And then there's new entrants that we need to pay a little bit of attention to. A lot of them are open source, some of them are modular, but a lot of them are built to support open access. And this can provide some challenges. The standards for publishing are not always followed. The JATS DTDs, counter-complaint usage reports, there's little flexibility in a lot of the new emerging platform operations. There's obviously, if they've been built for open access, there's no access controls or e-commerce models involved, which makes them insufficient for publishers that have subscription journals. Some of them are flatly not interested in working with subscription publishers. It's against their mission. They won't talk to you. So they're off the table. But also, different platforms have different requirements as far as how much hands-on is needed to keep them fed and keep them running. And not all societies in particular, or smaller publishers, have those kinds of resources. Sustainability is a problem with some of the new entrants. Societies and smaller publishers are most definitely risk averse to working with startups, so we want to see, kind of a long time proof of concept before making a big change. And philanthropically funded initiatives are like a big red flag. I mean, we just need to know that these are going to be funded in perpetuity. It's extremely difficult to move. So looking at that sort of the comments about the tools required, what are our solutions? So I'll propose a few things that I think might protect some of us from more consolidations and mergers going forward. If we had increased standardization and interoperability, meaning common submission formats, boy, it makes me crazy that we all ask for something different in our manuscript submissions. Do we really need that stuff? Can't we just ask for a standard format for a manuscript? That would make everyone's lives a whole lot easier. Our vendors would be happier. They'd be able to process the content a lot easier. Our authors would be happier. Strict adherence to the standard DTDs so that, again, things are much more interoperable. Less customization of the basics. I would also say, can we do away with reference formatting and just pick one and go with it? I mean, just imagine how much easier things like cross-ref tagging would be if we all just use one standard reference. We need things to be a little bit more portable. Manuscripts are going to need to be more portable, and there's initiatives around that. Reviews are going to need to be more portable. So some journals are now saying, sure, if you had this paper reviewed at another journal and you didn't get published, go ahead and submit it to us and give us those reviews and we'll take a look at them. But we need to make it easier for that to happen. And it really, a lot of this comes down to making it easier to change vendors. So we're not seriously looking at moving from Adipon just because Wiley bought them, or from, editorial manager just because Elsevier bought them. But moving is an incredibly difficult thing, particularly when, we don't have IT support, we just have our own publishing technology department. It would put any new development that we would have, out of contention for at least 3 or 4 years to even consider doing that. So, and then it's important too that we keep these relationships, that we keep the publishers and the vendors accountable, that we ensure that they respect the firewall between publisher content, and that we ensure that accountability goes forward. And finally, I think we need a bit of a strong dose of reality. So what I mean by that is that some will say, well, don't even worry about it. Everything's just going to go on preprint servers, and we don't need to worry about making journals more sustainable. And I would say that preprint servers in their current form are not equipped to do that. And for a lot of the reasons that I've already mentioned, sustainability being one of them, adhering to certain technical standards. And actually people want that. People want their articles to be edited. They want them to read well. They want them to be found. They want tagging to be done so that there is search engine optimization. They want to be able to link things through and from. They want their data. They want all this stuff. And this is what publishers do. And so what we need to do is find an easier and more cost-effective way to deliver those things that our audience wants, and to do it in a much easier and more sustainable way. Thank you very much.